Hey, meaningful movers. Welcome back to Moving With Me, the podcast, where actions have meaning, words have meaning, and we open up the conversations to discover what's your next move. I'm your host, Krystal. In today's episode, let's go digging around in that seemingly endless pile that we know of as the lost and found. What knowledge do we pick up as we go about looking for answers? But you know how it is and what we do. We need to set that theme, so let's go ahead and do that. The word of the day is exploration. This is the action of traveling to and through unknown territory to learn about it. First of all, let me just say that alone takes quite a bit of courage. You are finding your footing as you move along the trail. Sure, you are mapping the course for others, but most of us rarely pay attention to the evolution that we unfold in ourselves. Sometimes you find more than you've bargained for. That's enough of me talking. How about we introduce our guest? And there's no one better to do that than herself, Allicia, with 2 L's. Why don't you give the people a bit of background about yourself and what you're going to share with us today?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. And I love your word of the day. Oh my goodness. My name is Allicia Johnson Niles, and I am a survivor of murder. That sounds really weird, but my dad was murdered when I was 2 years old in the military. I'm passionate about helping, especially kids who have gone through grief. I was diagnosed with complex PTSD. Some people prefer not to put the D on there. For me, I definitely consider it a disorder because I hate it. I was diagnosed with that when I was 35 years old. Come to find out, I had it my entire life. A little bit of background. Like I said, I was 2 years old. My parents' love story was just very sweet. They were just a sweet little young power couple. My dad had been in the Navy for several years, met my mom in college, swept her off her feet, took her to the East Coast, took her to Hawaii where my brother was born, and then 8 months later, my dad was killed. So, tragic story. But the way I was raised, which I'm very, very grateful for, especially back in the 70s, my mom was very, very open. So I knew from the very beginning, your daddy was killed by a bad guy. We also grew up in a very religious family. I was told I was going to see him again and that he was still there and that he still loved me. So I grew up in what people would see. I was very lucky. That's the best way I can describe it, is people would be like, oh, you're so lucky. And I thought, oh, I'm so lucky. I don't remember how it felt when I found out my dad was killed because I have absolutely no memories at all of my dad. I mean, I was 2. Last time I saw him, I was 2 weeks away from turning 2 years old because we went back to the mainland while my dad was going to be deployed. I used deployed loosely, but his ship was supposed to be out. They were getting ready to go out to sea, and that was in January. And then he was supposed to be done with being out at sea, done with the Navy the following November. And so he and my mom felt really strongly that my mom needed to go back and stay with my grandparents while he was finishing up his tour of duty. For some reason, they just felt guided that that was the way it needed to be. Then on March 27th, I will get emotional at weird times here, probably.
It's fun.
Yeah, March 27th, 3 days after his 28th birthday, he was murdered by one of his own men. But she was surrounded by family. Nothing will take away that loss of having somebody deliberately take my dad.
No, look, you can tell the love that you have for your daddy. And even at the age that you were before we, quote unquote, have memory or have a huge level of consciousness or just an understanding of emotion, it just goes to show you how natural that is.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to definitely just give you a huge shout out to just saying that and that kind of message that you're delivering to a lot of people who didn't get a chance to see their father. I'm pretty sure you have a lot of folks that are relating to this story, for sure, just in the 5 minutes. Right?
Thank you. That means a lot.
Sure.
Well, it's funny because I'm just kind of like, I knew what I was going to say, and then all of a sudden I'm just like, oh, wait a minute, here's the story. This is what's coming out. So,
but it's the best part.
Yeah. Well, no, you create a great environment. Yeah, I do love him. That's why I'm writing this book. It's been an intense love-hate relationship. I've been working on the book for over 10 years, just trying to get it published the right way, make sure I have it just right. Well, I grew up being afraid of everything. I was afraid of my own shadow. And I'll get into that in a few minutes, but it's like, like deep down, I knew some things that were really going on that made me even more afraid. And so, talking about the people that would be able to relate, it's like so many little kids. And I've learned this as I've started to get out there, as I started to grieve, as I started to write my book, as I've started to connect more with other surviving families. Little kids, especially if they lose their loved one before they can remember them. It seems like I have not met a single one, and of course there are a lot I haven't met, but they always feel embarrassed for their feelings. They feel like they don't have the right to be sad because it's like they're carrying around all this sadness because they don't remember. I mean, it's just kind of,
Yeah.
I could go at this as, oh my gosh, society's so horrible. It creates a horrible place. Society does have it a little bit messed up. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. Anybody, you lose a loved one 2 weeks later or a month later, they're like, oh my gosh, get over it, get out, do something. I'm not saying sit in your hole and wallow, but at the same time, it seems like grief is such an uncomfortable subject. Do I hate it? Yes, I hate it. I absolutely hate it. But it's such an uncomfortable subject that it's almost kind of like, all right, let's just kind of polish it over and move on. Move on as in run away from it. Let's not talk about it. It's just very uncomfortable to deal with people who are grieving. I'm going off on some major tangents. Sorry.
You did.
Okay.
Look.
Sorry.
No, you're good. And I think that definitely sets up the tone for that conversation of just exploration, right?
Oh, that's
because
true.
it does. It's like I am confused right now with these feelings that I have, and for some reason I'm embarrassed for them. And there is a level of shame that's attached to that you know that you shouldn't have. Like, I should have the feelings of missing my father.
Because I don't know him.
Right? And beyond words. When you talk about this level of discovery, okay, you said that you notice that people who have experienced this type of loss before they kind of have had this full life experience with this individual, you tend to see them come out as people pleasers because they're hyper aware of mortality. Tell me more
100%.
about that. That was so good.
Oh, yeah, it's interesting. Well, for one thing, I can still remember the thoughts that I had when I was a 3-year-old. My very first memory I had after my dad died, we were living with my grandparents. My mom's got 8 brothers and sisters. A lot of her siblings were living at home. We had huge support, and my mom, because it was military, she was able to help my grandparents build an apartment down in their basement. So I remember walking down those stairs, so it had been a while after my dad had died, but that was my first memory. And we talked about him all the time before my mom got remarried. We'd talk about him, but it's not like I really knew him. I just remember it was almost kind of like my favorite bedtime story. And I had some feelings that I couldn't explain. And I don't want to villainize my mom's remarriage. In fact, it was the best thing. But it was almost kind of like there was this something bigger with us. It was almost like he was still with us in a sense. But I remember, as far as interacting, speaking of having a huge family, I had a lot of cousins. They're my best friends. And I would compare myself to them at 3 years old. I was always trying to make sure that they were happy. I was always trying to make sure that other people were taken care of. As I did some research as far as like grief and anxiety and things like that, and some introspection, like, I didn't think I was as good as them. I went to this eating disorder and body image class in college, and she was saying that there's this timeline where when you're a little kid, everything that happens is because of you. Egocentric. I mean, all right, good things happen. It's because I'm amazing. My daddy was taken because I wasn't good enough for him. My daddy was Superman. So is that it 100%? I don't know, but it rings true to me because I did grow up thinking I was less than and constantly trying to please people and constantly trying to prove my worth. Even as a little teeny kid, it just kind of snowballed. My mom remarried when I was 6 years old, which my stepdad, I couldn't ask for a better stepdad. They then proceeded to have 5 more boys. So I have 6 brothers. Again, more best friends. I love them. I hated it growing up. Anyway, my mom remarried, and like I analyzed because as I got older, I had this hatred for myself. And I don't like using that term, but I did. I hated myself. I kept trying to figure out why I hated myself. I'm going to go through what I think was going on. So, toddler, I wasn't good enough to get my dad. My dad was Superman. My dad is Superman. Just ask anybody. Yeah. When my mom remarried, I remember a couple things. First of all, I couldn't sleep in her bed anymore. That did not go well. I'm sure that was a part of a grief, part of abandonment. Also, that was my place. And then here comes this guy who I'm like, I'm sorry, we didn't want you here in the first place because we wanted my dad here. He comes in, takes over, and then my mom tells me she's changing her last name. And as a little 6-year-old, I lost my mind. So I was just like, don't you love daddy anymore? So I remember having that and going, okay. I just remember feeling the emotions at the time, but not being able to assign what they meant at that age. So then she changed her last name. I lost my place in the bed. So then as my brother started to be born and things like that, I did turn to food for comfort, and I started gaining weight. Again, I can't say how wonderful my stepdad is because he's amazing, but nobody's perfect. And so my brother was eating and I was eating a lot, and I reached for another helping and my dad's like, no, you can't have that. I'm like, well, why? And he's like, well, your brother's a growing boy. I hate that term so much. Old school thinking. eating disorder creating. Let's just.
Do you think he said that because he didn't know how to find the words to tell you you're eating too much? Like, I think you have an issue, portion control. Did he really truly believe, like, yeah, he's a growing boy, and that was like the easiest thing he could come up with?
Probably a combination.
Okay.
It's a little bit of old school thinking. Boys need more calories. I mean, again, this was like back in the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not saying that we're all backwards back then, but a lot of things have come up. I mean, good grief, it was like the food pyramid back then. Now things are always changing. But did I sit around and mope? Yes, I did. Did I realize that it was because I was anxious and grieving and struggling? Absolutely not. Not till I was in my 30s. So, because I did sit around a lot. I was very depressed. I was terrified of death. I was afraid of any time my mom left the house, I would pray that she'd make it back safely. I'd like hold my breath. Like I was terrified. So PTSD started very, very early. And that's another thing that's common with little kids is it's like they have to know where mom is. They have to know where their loved ones are. They almost feel like they've got this strange superpower that they don't to protect them. Yeah. Very, very protective. And that's one thing that I've noticed across the board. I'm part of this organization called TAPS. It's Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, for military families. I've got this core group of friends and they're widows, all three of them. Their husbands died before their child was 2.
Wow.
Yeah. In fact, my friend Ursula, her husband died 28 days before their son was born. All three of them were like very protective of mom, hyper aware of their surroundings. So there was them. And then I started to kind of observe other kids. I've got a friend, she's written a book. She actually was on Dateline. Her husband was murdered by his girlfriend's husband. So she found out she was being cheated on and a widow the same day, and she had 5 teeny kids. So he was hanging out with them. All of her kids acted the same way, constantly looking around at their surroundings. Not like basket cases or anything, but they acted like mini adults, sort of.
Yeah.
Very protective, making sure everybody was taken care of and wanting to know where mom was.
Wow. It's hypervigilance, for sure.
Yes.
Wowza.
Yeah, hypervigilance.
Yeah.
When that's what you are kind of born into or exposed to at an early age, I'm not trying to be like, oh, all is lost, gloom and doom, but it's like, it's natural. And I've been working with this therapist who's just amazing. And she's told my husband, she's like, it's not mental, it's physical. PTSD is not mental, it's physical. These triggers are physical. And so it's like, you have to kind of calm yourself down, all the scientific things, which I'm not really good at. I'm not even going to try to go into that. It's nothing to be ashamed of, but it's real. And anybody who has a child who's lost a loved one, and they don't even have to be a child. It can happen when you're older. Like my friend whose husband was killed, we share some similar triggers. And as far as like anxiety and having to fight anxiety and be like, okay, here's where my toolbox comes into play. And this is where I need to be like, all right, I need to remove myself from the situation, or kind of talk yourself through the trauma that's going on. But especially with little kids where it's like, they know nothing else.
Yeah.
If they had loss happen before they could form a memory, they really know nothing else. And even a little bit later.
Yeah. As you're talking about this, I'm thinking of my husband a lot because he had tragedy as well. He is very aware of mortality. We live in this house, like how he locks it, how he has videos, and how we travel and all these things, almost like we have to exist in this bubble to be sure that nothing happens. Like I cannot lose anyone else. Not like that.
Yeah.
And if I do, it's somehow my fault. You're right. It's like it's this burden that they put on themselves, and he's still in this. And I'm listening to you because I'm like, I need to recommend some things.
Therapy.
Yeah. But the thing is, he has got to talk. I don't know if it's he doesn't want to bring up those emotions. I mean, it's hard, like crying. You've cried so hard before you're like exhausted and you go to sleep. I feel like he doesn't want to think that. I don't think he wants to feel that. He wants to keep himself and his mind so busy to not have to confront that.
How old was he, if you don't mind me asking?
10, I think.
10. Okay. That's a different, but a very, very challenging age because he remembers the before and the after. Right. And again, I'm not a therapist. Everybody's different. So yeah, you do feel like even little teeny kids. I remember when I was 3 years old, again, thinking that if I prayed for my mom, just feeling like it was my duty. Like it was up to me to protect her, even though I couldn't. So there's this kind of, it's like this hideous juxtaposition where it's like, I need to protect them, but I can't. And I know that I can't, but I'm still going to put everything that I can into trying. Bargaining with God.
Yeah.
Locking all the doors. I mean, I live in the woods and my husband now knows we lock the doors. And he's like, why do we lock the doors? I'm like, because that's what you do. I don't care that we live in the middle of nowhere. We lock our doors.
My God, that's interesting to enter a battle that you know is futile, but you
Yeah.
go anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so it does wreak havoc on you, right? You obviously CPTSD, but this affected more than just you. This affected your dating life. How?
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, first of all, I hate, like, I cannot stress hate. If you can't love yourself, nobody can love you. I hate that. Like, that sounds really pathetic. I mean, it's like, yes, we need to have confidence. Are we born confident? Yes, we are. But at the same time, we know our flaws, especially when something bad happens to somebody that you love who is seemingly perfect. Do I know my dad was not perfect? Yes, I do. Was he an amazing man? 100%. I've heard that from countless people. But when somebody that good gets taken away, then why am I not going to go next? You know? And so you kind of start to question your worth. And so back to the whole, nobody will love you if you don't love yourself. I'm like, well, why can't they see me for who I am? It tries to be too much put in a box, where I think there is a combination of allowing yourself to be imperfect. I think even just understanding your emotions. And, I'm not saying that anybody who hasn't gone through therapy is a lost cause or is not going to be happy. I mean, that's being extreme. As far as my dating life and as far as what happened to me, like I said, I was constantly trying to please people and then dealing with this grief, which actually one thing that was so cool that I learned about grief, because I am a stress eater and I have had this eating disorder my whole life where it's like I want to eat everything and then I beat myself up. Another thing is my mom is 5'8". Hopefully this isn't triggering to people. She's 5'8" and 115 pounds on a big day. She's teeny. Wow. Yeah, she is itty bitty. I mean, that's the way she's built. That is not the way I'm built. But she also has a garden, chases her grandkids, is one of the busiest people I know. But anyway, I was constantly comparing myself to her. I would just turn to food for comfort. And so then I kind of gave up on myself. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm fat. The first time I wrote down that I needed to go on a diet, I was 8 years old. So I had this self-hatred, eating, hating myself for it, embarrassed to try things, sitting around. And then I ended up going to fat camp when I was 13. I stayed with my aunts and they helped me eat healthy because I was getting to an unhealthy level. It was as a couch potato and I looked it. I lost weight and then I had a growth spurt. I moved to a different town. I looked completely different and they're like, yay, the new girl, popular. I was still kind of in that mid weird looking stage, 8th grade,
Yeah.
I was so insecure by that point that I did not date. And so it was just a vicious cycle. I wanted to be asked out. I wanted Mr. Wonderful to sweep me off my feet. And yet I was so stuck in this unresolved grief and this anxiety, which people understand anxiety more now, and I'm so grateful for it. I was so stuck in my anxiety and my grief that I wasn't horrible to be around, but I wasn't happy. Who wants to be around somebody who's unhappy and who doesn't like themselves? So I am absolutely 100% contradicting myself, saying if you don't love yourself, you can't be loved. But it's like, if you're miserable, nobody wants to be around you. That's where it's like, take some action. You don't have to think you're perfect, but try to take some action to find things to get out of that misery. And then you'll be open for a better relationship. So yeah, like I didn't get asked out in high school. When I was 25, I got scouted to model and I'm like, what you know who you're looking at, right? This is still me. I didn't really, but still, I never thought I was good enough. But it did impact my dating life because you go out on a date and they're like, tell me about your family. Yeah, okay, well, oh, but your last name's different. Yeah, it is. Well, my dad died. Oh, I'm so sorry. How did he die? Well, he was murdered.
Like, I don't want to talk about that. Yeah.
Murdered, broken, bye. Also, another thing to add to it is there's we can get into this, another level of grief, like some other things that happened with my grief and my connection with my dad that was very good, but it also didn't help me relate to people. Are you okay if I go into that really quickly?
Yeah,
okay.
Please.
Like I said, I grew up and I'm still religious Christian. My mom would always talk about how we were going to see my dad again, which was beautiful. Then, of course, I'm like, well, I don't remember him. No big deal. The day my mom remarried, they took my dad's picture down off the piano, which makes sense. Don't want the new dad to feel like an outsider. It's a very, very delicate balance there. They took my dad's picture down. My mom and stepdad were off on their honeymoon, and I walked into the living room where the piano was, and I broke. My mom still feels bad. I'm like, you didn't know. It's okay.
Yeah.
The dialogue going through my head was, he's not allowed to be around. But what happens with a little kid? If their dad's not allowed to be around, you're not allowed to be around almost. It's almost half of who you are is not allowed. And so I stopped talking about my dad. So again, internal dialogue. I'm not allowed to talk about my dad. He's not allowed to be here. And just shoved whatever feelings, whatever anything came up. I'm like, I can't have that. I'm not entitled to that. That's not real. I'm crazy. So fast forward to 5 or 6 years, I was talking to my mom, and somehow my dad came up. I told her about a dream that I had when I was 5 years old. One of my biggest things with my message and everything like that is that you're allowed to connect with your loved ones, that they're there. I'm not telling people that they have to believe that they're there, but I 100% do believe it. So I told her about this dream that I had, and it was my mom and my dad and my brother and I walking home from church. I was 4 years old at the time. My brother was 3, I guess. I was wearing this purple and green dress that my mom had made for me. I start telling her about this dream, and they were singing this song. And she just looks at me like, "Are you kidding me?" And she's like, "Well, you know the meaning behind that song, don't you?" And I'm like, "Well, no." She's like, "It was your dad's favorite hymn in the world, and it was sung at his funeral." And I'm like, "Oh, well, that's kind of cool." So then she proceeds to bring down this box. It had my dad's dog tags, and it had his medals and his, just a few little precious things. It had my christening dress, the last birthday present my dad gave to me, and the purple and green dress, which she kept at random. So,
girl. Yes, indeed. Yes, God. Oh, my goodness.
Yes, exactly. Welcome to, "Hi, Allicia, I'm still here."
Yeah.
That kind of opened the door a little bit, but nope, I'm still crazy. I can't have that. I'd have little things that would come up. I kept a journal. I started writing in my journal from the time I was 8 years old. Hey, people, journal. Give your little kids journals. It's a good thing, even if they just draw pictures. Then when I was 17, I went back to Washington, D.C. to visit my best friend. Also, my uncle was out there, my dad's brother, and my dad was buried back there. And guess who hadn't been back there since she was 5 years old? So, right before I left, I was kind of nervous. I'm like, I don't love him. I don't remember him. Sure, I have these little things here and there, but he's a complete stranger to me, and I'm going to act weird at his grave, and his brother is going to feel disrespected. That was my concern. Then my mom told me a few things about, like, my dad's personality and about his killer and the nature of his death. I found out that my dad was trying to help the man who killed him. And that was the first time I actually cried over my dad's death, and I felt it was beautiful.
Yeah.
I don't know. Validating. It was an awesome experience. And then when I went to his grave, again going, okay, I'm going to be awkward. As soon as I saw his name in stone, I just sobbed. And I just felt this powerful connection. To add to the thanks God, I happened to be out there for Father's Day. Didn't think about going to visit my dad and my grandpa's graves in Arlington. Thought didn't even cross my mind. I was sitting there in church with her, had been making cookies for her dad. And we're sitting there at church, and my dad's funeral, they started to sing my dad's funeral hymn. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, can we please go to Arlington? Is that okay? And we went to Arlington, and again, I felt my dad even closer. And so 10 minutes later, back into your question as far as my dating life, while I was back in Washington, D.C., my confidence started coming back. And there was a guy at church that liked me. I hadn't had my first kiss yet. I was 17 years old, but I knew that this guy was going to be my first kiss, and I was excited. And we went to my dad's grave, get in the car, and he gives me this big smile, and I have these thoughts going through my head. This might sound weird to some of your listeners. I apologize. You can edit if you want to. But I had this thought go through my head. It's like, ew, what a dork. Ew, yuck, that guy's got slobbery lips. Look, he is so ugly. And like all these thoughts. So he went in to kiss me, and he got a handshake. So I told my mom, and she was laughing so hard. And she's just like, your dad was sitting in the back seat. Was he? I don't know. But like, there would be times in my life where I'd have these little thoughts that would come to my head. It didn't feel like it was from the Holy Spirit. It didn't feel like it was my own thoughts. And then I'd tell my mom what the thought was, and she's like, your dad would have put it that exact way.
Oh, goodness.
So I felt him around. We get this perfect storm of non-dating, of unresolved grief, chronic insecurity, PTSD, people-pleasing, and it's just not the healthiest person, right? So yes, it impacted my dating. And you go on a date and you're like, tell me about your family. So I'd either not say anything or they'd be scared off.
I mean, let me tell you, as much as you're saying, like, oh, I'm going off on these tangents of whatever else, but you're tying them all together.
Okay.
You really are. And you mentioned that word before, it's connected. It really is. I think it's okay to have fleeting thoughts. As you were doing it, you still made the connection back to the original question.
Okay, good.
And in the midst of that, you're dropping great points of strategies, knowledge as far as journaling and just community and support system and faith and belief.
Thank you.
So I want to make sure that you don't feel that there is any kind of quote unquote tangent in here. Because you did very well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. I like hearing your perspective on that, but it's like, that's how I survived. It was the spirituality, the little miracles that happened along the way. I don't smoke, I don't drink. And I was able to stay away from self-medicating because I did have the support. And let me tell you, when my dad started to show up, he started to show up.
Yep.
It wasn't all the time, but there would be times when I was going through a really, really hard time, or I was about to make some stupid choices where I'd feel and be like, and it was just so out of the blue. People are always like, because I was a people pleaser, oh, you're too nice. Or, oh, you're too prissy. You're too much a goody-goody. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not going out and getting plastered on the weekends. That's just not my thing, you know? And if it is for other people, I don't judge, but it was not for me. Part of the reason is I grew up knowing that my dad was a narcotics officer who was killed by somebody on drugs. I'm like, I don't touch that. That's one thing I can share about the book. He was very anti that. I could never touch something that could have contributed to his death. But like, people are always like, oh my gosh, you're too prissy. You're too good. Remember, I was sitting outside church. I was skipping church, actually. And I'm like, I need a little bit of edge here. I think I need a tattoo. I think tattoos are beautiful. I think they are meaningful. Apparently my dad didn't. So I'm sitting here designing this tattoo in my brain to give me some edge so people don't think I'm made out of glass. All of a sudden, out of the blue, I have this thought, dirty sailors get tattoos, not my daughter. I don't know. Again, my brother now has tattoos and they are for my dad and I think they're beautiful. Now, my dad was East Coast gentleman through and through. We're talking like he went to prep school. He took dancing lessons, like this ultimate gentleman. I could see him say that. And then a few years passed, life had gotten a little bit more rough around the edges. I was at a writer's retreat and some of the people were talking about tattoos. And I was thinking, well, and before I could even think maybe, I had this thought, it's like, you really think I've changed my mind? That's hilarious. Well, my husband hates them. So I'm like, thank you, Dad.
Look at that.
And then when I was 30 years old, I was trying to date this guy. Here we go again. And I'm making it sound like I was broken. I had guys that were interested, but I was not aware that they're interested. So I was not a completely broken person. I don't know. I guess single women, where are my single ladies here? We understand it as a train wreck out there, you know?
It is.
I just thought it was all my fault. So
not at all.
For what it's worth, God's got a plan for me. You can't just sit on your butt and do nothing. I know this.
Yeah.
I do believe he has a plan, and I think he likes to work with us. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
He's going to find ways to guide us, but let us make our own decisions at the same time. There are a lot of really, really cool things that led me to meeting my husband and being ready for him. Even some God winks that led to it. When I was 30, I was trying to date this guy. His mom had died, and I was still in that I have no right to feel sad about my dad. He was just like, you have every right to be sad. I have memories, you don't. Thank you, validation. Boom, let the floodgates start. Then he's like, I know this is none of my business, but you really need to find out what happened with your dad. I'm like, well, he is a narcotics officer who was killed by a crazy guy and pled insanity and got away with it. Well, where's the guy? I don't know. What really happened? I don't know. I had been so scared of, first of all, the Navy. The Navy was this big evil organization that took my dad. That's very 3-year-old thinking that stuck with me throughout my life. Also, my dad's killer is at large. Those were my concerns. I did not want to open the horrific level of pain and grief that I pictured that my mom had experienced and that I pictured that other people. I was so terrified of grief that I ran from it. So anyway, he's like, you have every right to miss your dad. What happened to him? Well, I like this dude. And so I'm like, well, maybe I should figure it out. But also I knew there's something deep inside of me that's just like, it's time. And so I reached out to my mom and I started reaching out to guys on my dad's ship. I got in contact with a bunch of people. Along the way, I'd have thoughts like, do this right now. You need to call this person right now. This happened at this time. And there's no way I could have known if my dad wasn't there helping or somebody, Holy Spirit. But great, all these cool things happened. I was able to find my answers and everything. In the meantime, back to the whole love life thing, even my friends from TAPS are like, you can't talk about your dad because it scares guys away. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? At this point, I was writing a book. I'm like on a date. Hi, how are you? What do you do for a living? Well, I work in education. Okay, that's cool. I'm writing a book too. What's your book about? Nothing, anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, as it turned out, things worked out beautifully. And I remember sitting at my dad's grave, it was 6 years ago, and just feeling kind of defeated a little bit. Here, I'd been working on this. I'd gotten my answers. I was in the middle of writing my book, and I remember going to his grave, which is my sanctuary. I love it. I love being there. And I'm like, Daddy, where is he? And I'm not saying that the only way to be happy is to find your one and only true love or whatever. I'm not saying that's the case, but it was something that I had always wanted so much in my heart. I was happy. I was getting things done, but there was that piece that was missing. And I'm just like, Daddy, where is he? And I had the thought come to my head that was like, the person who will come with you here is the right one. Deeper meaning. And so I was just like, okay, basically the person who will accept me for who I am, including my past, including which, my grief is not all ugly. It's not my dad.
It's okay.
My dad deserves to be part of my family.
Yeah, of course.
Sorry.
It's okay.
He deserves to be remembered and honored by my husband. And anyway, so I knew that that's what it meant. And I knew I needed to kind of tell my friends politely when they said that, be like, you know what? Well, you're wrong and that's okay. That's fine. So then I started working, went to therapy. I'd gone to therapy before, but I started working with EMDR. Have you heard of that?
Yep.
It's a big one for PTSD, and I recommend it only if you find the right practitioner. Be picky when you look for that practitioner. But I started working with EMDR. My dating life started improving drastically. And people are always like, just don't focus on it. It'll happen. I hate that line too. I'm like, you got to be actively out there. You can't be sitting at home eating your Twinkies and be like, well, I'm not focused on it. But I was focused on other things. I was working with some conferences and like TAPS and everything like that. And I was online just going, I don't even know why I'm online. Anyway, long story short there, I met my husband who lived on the other side of the country. It was different. And a couple things that are really cool about it, because I was always like, I gave up the hope that my dad would have something to do or there would be some connection to my dad with my husband, because I'm like, of course that's not going to happen. But as I was talking to my husband, he's like, oh yeah, my dad was in the Navy too. Oh, he was in Pearl Harbor too. Oh. And his mom and dad met up in Pearl Harbor. They left 6 months before my family got there. This ring that I'm showing you right here, this diamond, this was purchased in Hawaii. This was his mom's diamond. So,
oh my God.
There was that kind of thing. And the first time I spoke with my husband on the phone was the day before my grandma's funeral, or 2 days before. I was flying out the next day to Washington, D.C. to Arlington with my mom and my brother. The first time my mom, brother, and I had been at my dad's grave, which ironically was the anniversary of my dad's death. So that was the day after my grandma's funeral. We're sitting there at my dad's grave together, the first time since I was 5. And I get a little text from my husband being like, oh, hi, hope you're enjoying your trip. Just little things like that. With all the ugly and the hard and everything like that, it's really cool to see how God was there the entire way.
Yeah.
Almost like carrying a little safety net.
Yeah.
I was very blessed. And even though it was very, very hard, cliche, I wouldn't be the person I was without it. Yeah. Do I wish he was still here? Of course I do. But at the same time, I found a lot of purpose in my grief. I am hell-bent on making sure that these kids who have lost a loved one early or who have lost a loved one have the resources that they need and have that validation and be like, guess what? You get to still love your dad. He's still with you. He's still raising you. It hurts. You'll always have that ache, but it's okay.
I think that's perfect. When I get inspired by certain guests, I kind of give them a name. You're like the fervent traveler.
I love it.
You just haven't stopped. And I think every step that you take helps someone else move closer and closer to where you're going. So, Allicia, are you ready to give us your golden nuggets and add that ketchup just to recap?
No, actually, speaking of the fervent traveler and things like that, my website that is up right now is angelinarlington.com. That's for my book, which no, we don't have a publisher yet. We're looking. But my message is called Unlikely Courage. And that came about when my co-author and I were talking. And I'm just like, here I was this timid little mouse, but I had this unlikely courage to face the Navy. And yes, we did find my dad's killer, by the way, who was at large. But it's unlikely courage, which is everybody has it within them, even if they think that they don't, and they just need to give it a shot. As they take each little step forward, venturing into the things that scare them, they're going to have that unlikely courage to propel them forward if they let it. So that's one of my biggest messages, is have that unlikely courage to face the things. Don't be stupid. If you want to go do some crazy things, that's fine, but just give things a shot. If it's nagging at you, move forward and face it. Another thing is the answer is always no unless you ask. And I've had a lot of no's turn into miracles.
You did it.
Yeah.
Those were perfect.
Thank you.
That's the episode today. This conversation has had me thinking about self-awareness. Some of us don't really know when we are in a season of change, while others are completely and utterly aware that they are solidly in the in-between phase. In between jobs, in between careers, in between relationships, and so on. There is this immense pressure that we must always know. And if we don't, we had better find out, and soon. Sometimes we feel incomplete when we don't have answers. As you set off into the vast unknown, make sure you don't set expectations and let all the deep down realities come to the surface. There is beauty in being lost just as much as there is joy in being found. I truly appreciate Allicia for sharing her very personal journey of courage and its complexities. Transition happens in the most unlikely of situations and gives back as much as you put in. Can you remember a time when you went searching and discovered more about yourself? Or perhaps that is the stage you are currently in. What about this or that journey did you find most impactful? I love it all, and so will someone else. Before I let you go, Allicia, why don't you go ahead and remind the people who you are, where they can find your resources, or reach out to you.
Okay, my name is Allicia Johnson Niles. My website, the best way to reach me is on angelinarlington.com. I am on Instagram under Unlikely Courage. That is in the process of being more developed. But yeah, angelinarlington.com. You can get a free copy of my chapter, not book, and stay in touch with me there. I love to connect.
Fantastic. Look at you, keeping that maiden name, huh? I did it too.
Did you?
I know. Yeah.
I was excited to tack on the Niles, but I'm Burr Johnson's daughter.
Yep. You got one right here too, so I'm with you.
That's awesome.
I'll make sure to include all of Allicia's resources and connections in the episode description, as well as on my website's resources page, movingwithmeaning.com. Make sure you guys subscribe to the show, Moving With Me in the podcast, and tap that alert bell so you know when these episodes drop. I am on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and YouTube Music. Please share, like, repost, and follow. Tag someone. We are creating a community. Quick housekeeping before you go. Follow me on Instagram at movingwithmeaning82 and on Pinterest at Arthur KB Clark. Also connect with me on LinkedIn. I do dabble in TikTok at Krystal B. Clark. My Etsy store has some handy dandy digital downloads. Lastly, run over to my YouTube channel and have a look or two. Links are in the episode. Alrighty. I'm Krystal on Moving With Me, the podcast, reminding you to take it one step at a time. All moves have meaning. Check y'all later.